This episode of Gators Breakdown is brought to you by MyBookie. Use promo code Gators to double your first deposit. Only at mybookie.ag. And this episode is also brought to you by Shark Coatings. Visit sharkfloorcoatings.com when you need professional floor coating services done right the first time.
Want more Gators Breakdown? Join Gators Breakdown Plus. Starting at $3 a month. Get access to unique episodes, plus a blog, chat room, giveaways, shout-outs, and more. Gators Breakdown Plus is furthering the interaction with fans and listeners like you. Head to gatorsbreakdown.supportingcast.fm to join Gators Breakdown Plus today. Gators Breakdown. Because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters, and you can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And we have a jam-packed episode right here on this Monday night before Florida, Georgia coming at you. We got Florida, Georgia game coming up Saturday, and we got commits to talk about right here on this Monday night. Roderick Kearney, offensive lineman at Orange Park, right outside of Jacksonville, commits to the Gators, and we'll also get into the decision of big-time five-star cornerback Cormani McClain. His decision coming up Thursday. As I said, jam-packed episode. And to help me break it all down, of course, Monday night, Will Miles joins me as he does every Monday night. And our special guest ahead of Florida, Georgia, is Ben Troupe. So, as I said, plenty to get into, and we got plenty of avenues right here to get to all of it. So, Will, Ben, guys, thanks for joining us. We got plenty to discuss.
Just a little bit, buddy. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, what recruit so close to Dave. I don't know where you at, Dave. But Dave, look, they here. I don't know where they at, but yes, Dave. We got recruits, Florida, Georgia, Billy Napier. He gonna need all the good publicity he can get before Saturday because you already know we already waiting.
Hey, this is about a year ago. I asked Dan Mullen that famous recruiting question, and here we are talking about an actual commit Florida Georgia week.
Well, the fan base thanks you, Dave. You've gotten that multiple times for starting that narrative. I'm not sure you're all that proud of it, but we find it entertaining, at least in terms of where we were, where we're at now. And look, it's nice to be getting these guys coming. And obviously, if with Kearney coming into the fold, McClain potentially next. Looks like Florida's going to pick up some good ones. And, I think, like you said, Ben, we may see the need for some of those big-time recruits coming up this weekend.
Yeah, and one thing that's in common with the top 5 teams in the country right now is recruiting classes. For people that be thinking, oh, you don't need the talent. Okay, tell Alabama that. Tell Georgia that. Tell Ohio State that. Tell the team. Tell Clemson that. Because it makes your scheme easier to run. If I got the best players running it, I don't got to be the best coach teaching it. And I know, I still think that a guy like Billy Napier is always going to get the short end of the stick because he's coming from Louisiana, making all this money at Florida. But give it some time, man. It seems to be working. Long as the other 2 teams in the state of Florida not getting them, I will take every last one of them.
Hey, that was a big one from this. Roderick Kearney flips from Florida State to Florida. So while you help your own team, you hurt a big-time rival out west. So plenty to get into here on this episode. We'll start with Ben Troupe. We'll start with some Florida Georgia talk, and then we'll get into all the recruiting talk as well. I know Ben's got just a few minutes with us, and really special thing going on that he's got going on Friday night before Florida Georgia, an event that he's got taking place up there. Up in Georgia, not far across the state line, so it's worth making that drive. But before we get there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're watching us live on YouTube, like I know so many of you are right now. Subscribe, get those notifications, those likes really help us out on the YouTube side of things, and check us out. Gators Breakdown Plus. That conversation keeps going there. Link is in the description. All the conversation. Look, it is on fire right now. If Gators Breakdown fans aren't watching this episode of Gators Breakdown, they're probably in the Gators Breakdown Discord talking about all the commitments and the big game coming up this week. So, all right, Ben, let's start with you and get to this event here. The 4th annual Ben Troupe Florida Georgia Legend Series takes place Jekyll Island up in Georgia. Like I said, not a far drive. If you're going to be in town for Florida Georgia, just a short drive up 95 to take part in this in this event. And you got, for the Florida side, of course, that's our main audience here. Man, you got some big-time Gators on this one.
Yeah, Georgia coming off that national championship, man, I had to bring in some heavy hitters. I appreciate those guys showing me some love. Chris Rainey, Jeff. I actually called Chris Rainey to ask him. And this is a funny thing, man. Being former Florida Gator, we never talked to each other. We know of each other. Chris Rainey spoke to me like we've known each other for years. Him and Jeff Demps just happen to be really, really close friends. So Jeff Demps, congratulations going into the University of Florida Athletic Hall of Fame. Him and Joe Hayden and company. I got to get my teammate that went into the Florida Georgia Game Hall of Fame with me, Jeff Chandler, the golden leg. And then you talk about Tim Worley from the Georgia side, DJ Jones, as well as Scott Williams. It's going to be fun. Fourth annual at the Western Hotel on Jekyll. We're going to have the round table at 6 o'clock. Going to have a meet and greet at 5 o'clock. Going to have some local football teams and players coming over just to show some love. But because Georgia, we're going to be a lot of we in red and black dog country, a lot of barking going on, Will and Dave. So I had to make sure I bring in a bunch of guys that won some national championships so I can kind of get them Georgia boys off my back a little bit.
Well, that's always welcome. It's their first one in forever. So they're going to enjoy it. And hey, look, they got us right now. That's the bad thing about it. But hopefully, as we'll get to later, we'll talk about some recruits coming up, and maybe the years down the road, we can sit here and say, all right, well, Florida Georgia is going to be this constant top 10, top 5 matchup, like we see all across the country in some of these big time rivalry games. Ben, but what made you want to start an event like this? You mentioned this is the 4th annual one. You've done it for a few years now. What's been the feedback, and why do you keep doing it year after year?
Well, being a part of the media, Dave, I want to do something for us. A lot of times when I hear about events, I'm always getting invited to events, and it just came across. I'm always asked, man, what do you got? What do you former players do for each other, especially around the biggest game of the year, Florida Georgia? And I just wanted to come up with something because a lot of these guys have played in the game, had tremendous success in the game, but I wanted to get the perspective of the other side. So I did the Florida Georgia Legend Series. I've had some big-time guests come through, a lot of people showing a lot of love throughout the years. I appreciate the Western Hotel, but it's a chance for me to just show some appreciation to the guys that have come through the game, paved the way for the beautiful game it is now. And it's been incredible. It's been very, very humbling because people seem to think that we're going to come together and, it's going to be fisticuffs. It's going to be, you got to bring the police in. I don't even know most of these guys on the Georgia side. It's all love. We don't have to play in the game, so it'll be a lot of trash talk going back and forth, but I've enjoyed the conversations because me being a tight end, my perspective is going to be different than a Chris Rain. It's going to be different than a John Lassinger. I'm getting it from all facets of the game. And, I had Willie McClendon last year who won, SEC Player of the Year when he was there. So just some very, very unique perspectives, very, very unique opportunities. And like I said, Paulie Walson was actually a receiver that played with Coach Spurrier. And let me tell you, man, that dude got to talking and, had a couple of alcoholic beverages, if I could say that. And it got really, really funny from the first annual. But here we are, the 4th annual, and I'm looking to grow it. And I hope it continues to go. Well, like I said, I couldn't appreciate Jekyll Island and the Western seeing my vision and allowing, country boy like myself to be able to do something for these former players.
Yeah, Ben, you're from Georgia. I was raised in Georgia. This game means a whole lot to us from a different perspective of hating that red and black when it comes down to, the last week of October and early part of November. Ben, all right, let's get your thoughts right quick, and then, Will can jump in. Florida's sitting at 4-3 coming into this game, not to where a lot of people want the Gators. Some expected because of the first year and the transition that Billy Napier's going through that Florida might be sitting around this spot coming into this game. So, 4-3 with a chance to shock the world and go 5-3, or like many expect, Florida to go 4-4. So still a lot riding on this game. Of course, it always is when these two teams match up. But how would you assess Florida so far this year, sitting at 4-3?
I think it's progress. When you look at how well Tennessee is playing right now, being undefeated, a lot of people are going to say, you go back to SEC media days, people had Florida pick, third or fourth in the East. You look at every game that Florida's played in, they've been in. I mean, yes, that LSU loss is looking a lot more impressive when you look at what LSU did, a couple of days ago. And then when you think about what Tennessee is doing, obviously the Kentucky game got away from us. That Utah win is still a big win. That Missouri win is a big win. You are just listen, man. It's building blocks. It's a day by day practice by practice process. And I just like the fact that every game, you are in every last game. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of what happened in those games, but 4-3 is not where you want to be. But people forget it's a rebuild because of where it is. University of Florida is going through a rebuild. They've had some really, really good ups. They had some downs. But I'll take the 4-3 because, like you said, Dave, if you know the football guys all come together and say, hey man, we're gonna just give Florida this one this year, just so Georgia don't go undefeated in the regular season 2 years in a row, even though Tennessee is still down the line for Georgia. I like what Billy Napier is doing. I like the direction. Patrick Toney and Corey Raymond. Sean Spencer, Mike Peterson. I just like what they're doing, establishing the run. But at the end of the day, you are what your record says you are, even though I think we played a lot better than people thought we would at this point. Got to go out there and finish the season strong, and you got a big one starting this Saturday against them boys from Athens.
Yeah, well, Ben, so obviously the defense has been sort of the lightning rod, especially after that LSU game and the Tennessee game as well. But really, it feels like the defense really struggled to make anybody uncomfortable, right? Especially when it comes to Hendon Hooker, when it comes to Jaden Daniels. I'm just sort of curious, what did defenses do to you to make you uncomfortable, or what did you not like when defenses did to you? Because obviously Georgia has some tight ends as well. So what would you advise the Florida defense to do to make Georgia uncomfortable when they're trying to come up against the defense? Because as of right now, they really haven't been able to do anything to make these sort of elite teams, or not even really elite teams, decent SEC teams, feel uncomfortable.
Number one, they got to play with confidence. Third and long when I played was 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, maybe 3rd and 12. You can't give up 3rd and 26, 3rd and 27, because even the offense is ready to get off the field. They're going to run a draw. They're going to run a quick throw to get off the field. And I think the thing about our defense is sometimes they be right there to make the play. DB's got to be for sure tacklers on the outside. Ventrell Miller can't be having 15 and 20 tackles a game. That means that he's a one-man wrecking crew. Brent Cox and Javon Dexter and Princeton, and those guys, they got to find a way to get to the quarterback consistently so that back seven can work. And as far as like the safety position this year, I really, really don't understand it. I know there's been a change at the safety position right now, but they got to play with confidence. They got to play with poise, because if I could play with confidence and poise, I could just go out there and react. And as far as like Brock Bowers, the tight end for Georgia, look, bang him, and bang him some more. I'd rather you risk taking the guy away off our defense so that because he can't hurt you. Because I like Darnell Washington, but he'll make a play here or play there. A guy like Brock Bowers, man, he can take the top off any defense. I do not know how fast he is. I just know that people do not catch him when he gets the ball in his hands. Do not let that guy be a game wrecker, because, like I said, coming here, true freshman, a true sophomore. My apologies, and I think a guy like him could be a game breaker, because they give him and you got to stop him running the ball. Hopefully they're not doing that anymore. They was giving him the rock, just letting him run. Hopefully they're just throwing him the ball, letting him kind of look like a semi, not superhuman out there. But got to find a way to slow down Brock Bowers, because if you can, I think you force other guys on the outside to try to beat you.
Ben, you are in Georgia up there, but mainly in Brunswick, but the ESPN Coastal broadcast, all throughout the coastal of Georgia and then Southeast Georgia. So you cover a lot of Georgia football as well. What is your assessment of them? I asked your assessment of Florida, but what your assessment of Georgia coming off that national championship? Of course, Stetson Bennett returns, lit the world on fire to start this year, cooled off a little bit, but still playing really well. But he was playing at such a high level to start the season. It was probably going to be hard to match that. And then the defense, of course, one of the best college football's best defenses we ever saw last year. Lose some pieces, probably not there, but still a really, really good defense. Number one team in the country when they play Florida on Saturday. How do you assess their red and black?
Stetson Bennett is probably the best decision he's made is coming back this year, because he's comfortable. Been in the offense, 3 years, is in a room full of 5 stars, and it hasn't fazed him. He's never, ever going to look the part. And when I say look the part, I'm talking about his size. Not the biggest guy you ever seen, but I think his game is being elevated. I think he's playing with a big-time chip on his shoulder, because we've never seen the encore. Everybody been waiting on the feature presentation, that being the national championship. They finally got that now. What is going to be the encore? And I think you said the best, Dave. When you think about this defense, don't get a lot of sack numbers. Don't actually sack the quarterback a lot. But you couldn't tell, because they do everything by committee. Meaning that front four led by Carter and those guys. And when you look at what they want to do, they find a way to get make the quarterback very, very uncomfortable. And if you make a mistake with that secondary, they will hurt you. And as far as like the offense, they just do it. They just do whatever's working that day. I mean, the running game has not been what we've used to a Kirby Smart team to look like, but the scoreboard doesn't seem to show that, because at the end of the games, it'll be 10-0 going to halftime. Next thing you know, it's 30-0, and they used to playing with leads. So this Georgia team, they confident, right? They respect everybody they play, but they say this: Missouri, you had a chance to beat us till we got to the fourth quarter. So yeah, we'll look regular for 3 quarters, and then when they turn it on, can you deal with them when they come at you? And I think for this Georgia team, they understand that Kirby Smart knows, look, man, I'm $100 million head coach. I'm coming off a national championship. And they said we will not be the hunter this year. We will be the hunters. And they seem to be doing it. What? They're undefeated right now, and they're going to give you all you can handle for 4 quarters.
I mean, you talked about Georgia's defense being opportunistic, going to get turnovers. Certainly, Anthony Richardson struggled with that a little bit on the offensive side of the ball there for Florida. What do you see with him in terms of what he's doing and the next step he needs to take to make sure that this doesn't turn into a similar game than last year, right? I mean, the game was pretty close last year until all of a sudden Richardson had those 3 turnovers at the end of the first half. So is there something that Gator fans should be looking at when they're looking at how Richardson plays, especially early on, to be confident that we're not going to get non-core performance? Or is that just sort of the risk reward with Richardson right now? And, maybe you get a game with no turnovers and you're able to keep it close, or maybe you get a game with 4 and all of a sudden it's blown wide open.
I can live with the turnovers as long as it doesn't lead to points. And I think the thing about Anthony Richardson is he got to keep taking the next step as a passer. You know what he is as a runner. I mean, the thing about him, when people go, oh, man, he had an 81-yard scramble for a touchdown. Running backs don't do that. You don't take the ball 81 yards in football ever. I think the thing about Anthony Richardson is can he go through his reads? Can he get the best matchup? And the ball, if it's not there, throw it away. Can he not put us behind the chains the third down? And can he listen? And can he be Superman when he needs to be? I mean, I do think that what the game of football is going to is a guy like Anthony Richardson, a guy with a big arm that obviously is very, very athletic. But athleticism can be your biggest hindrance when that's all you rely on. Can't rely on athleticism every single play, because you're not more athletic than 11 guys on that Georgia defense. As great as you are, you got 11 guys that want nothing more for you to pull that ball down so they can try to take you out of the game. Protect himself, protect the football, keep us ahead of the chains on third down. And like I said, whenever he wants to show the world what he's able to do, hey, man, tuck it and run it and make sure you get out of bounds. But when it comes to Shorter, when it comes to Whittemore, when it comes to Pearsall, when it comes to zipping those guys, find a way to let your athletes go out there and make plays. I think if he can do that, especially with this running game that we got, because think about that, Florida's coming in with the much better running game, utilize the running game with Osiris Torrance and Montreal and Etienne. I think he's got a shot, because I've seen him get better each week. And like I said, he gave you 35 points against against an LSU team that is proven to be much better than people thought. But this Georgia team, they don't believe it yet. They've seen this other stuff, but they judging Anthony Richardson on what they've seen this year and what they saw last year. He's got to go out there and prove he is what his athleticism says he is.
Ben, you mentioned one of those players, and how much have you paid attention straight to the tight end position this year? Mostly for Florida, it's been Dante Zanders and it's been Keon Zipperer. Zipperer was one of the plays of the year so far with the catch and run and demolishing Tennessee Volunteers on the way to the end zone. What have you noticed from the tight end position and how Billy Napier uses that position?
I've noticed those guys are finding ways to be a a very, very important part of the offense, game in and game out. People look at how athletic these guys are, but you got to go out there and show it. I mean, Zip, the touchdown against Tennessee was like Zip saying, look, I might not get too many more opportunities this whole year, but I think that when you see what he's able to do, him and Zanders, and I think the thing about the tight end position is it's a focal point when you make it there. You prove it Monday through Friday, and hopefully you get to show it on Saturday. I mean, I don't know who's the I think Pearsall is the best route runner, and obviously him and Shorter and company, but tight ends are intermediate route runners. You guys are going up against linebackers and safeties. I mean, they should be able to go out there and make some plays. And while I do think Zipper is the most athletic of the bunch, Zanders is more of the prototypical tight end with what he does blocking. I think those guys they had a big game last year with they had a big game a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, when Kyle Pitts got knocked out of the game. Can those guys, be a spark, for this offense? Because like I said, you're gonna have to throw the football. You're gonna have to go with the best matchup. I think our tight ends, they just as good as anybody. Plus, this could be one of those games. If I am a Florida tight end, I'm looking at that other sideline. I know Brock Bowers, and I know, Darnell watching those guys on the other sideline. I want to outperform those guys, especially when the whole world is going to be looking for them Georgia tight ends to kind of be the focal point.
I mean, you sort of mentioned looking at the other side, seeing Bowers, that sort of stuff. How much as an offense, when you know your defense is struggling, do you take it upon yourself? Like, is it something that motivates you, or is it something where you can actually end up pressing and it causes problems because you know that the defense is going to struggle to stop the other team? I mean, we've seen a couple of times, the Tennessee game especially, right? You get that turnover by Anthony Richardson, game basically over. And so you're sort of sitting on that razor's edge where you make one mistake and the game's over. Does that add extra pressure, or is that something that you think sort of makes guys like you and guys like the guys on the Florida squad rise up to be able to meet that challenge?
You would hope so. Because, look, we know what we are at this point. We know we are as an offense, know we are as a defense, but the offense should want to be leading the way. And when I say leading the way, that way the defense can go out there and play loose. And we don't know what type of team Georgia is if they got to play from behind. We know what type of team they are because they're usually playing with a lead. So if you are the offense, let's go out there and put 4 quarters together. Let's go up against arguably one of the best defenses in college football and not blink. So, yeah, I mean, going back to my junior year, the reason why we had the game we had and the game with a touchdown pass I appreciate it is because Taylor Jacobs got hurt. And then him and Rex Grossman were the 1-2 combo that year. So me and, Carlos Perez and Kelvin Kite and Aaron Walker, we was able to go out there and help, spread the ball around. I think it's going to be that type of game, and that's what you want. I'm at the University of Florida, man, because I'm good enough to go out there and make plays whenever my number is called, regardless of who I go up against. I mean, that ain't Ed Reed over there. That ain't Sean Taylor at the safety position. That ain't, Patrick Willis at the linebacker position. Take nothing away from the Georgia defense. They're great. But that ain't Jordan Davis. That ain't Kobe Dean. That defense in 2021, you're not moving the ball against him. While Georgia is good this year, they showed that they are, kind of human, and you got to go out there and punch these guys in the mouth because they're going to punch back. And man, hopefully we'll be the last team standing.
Will, you got anything else?
No, man, just really appreciate you coming on, Ben. Hope your event goes really well. If I was anywhere near, I'd be down there, buddy.
Hey, it should go well. At the end of the day, I'm used to getting barked at. They barking all the time at me, and Dave knows. But listen, Chris Rainey, Jeff Demps, trash talkers, because Jeff Chandler's more mild-mannered. So, some of my family members going to be in the house. So I'm going to have to tell them, listen, y'all calm that down. The police will be somewhere, in the square if it gets too crazy. But no, it should be fun. I think the thing about it is it's just me trying to show appreciation to these former players. And like I said, man, because Georgia coming off that national championship, I had to have some Florida Gators with some rings on their finger. I think Chris Rainey and Jeff Dibbs going to be able to rep for us in a big way.
Ben, one more time.
Just make sure you remind them that they're SEC runner-ups last year, buddy. You got to let them know that.
Yeah, you can't. I could call them national champs, but you can't call them SEC champs. Like Will says, SEC runner-up. That's about what we can throw at them. Ben, let everybody know one more time the details for Friday night.
Yeah, the 4th annual Florida Georgia Legend Series held at the Westin Hotel on Jekyll Island. You can always go to Christian at ESPNcoastal.com or Ben at ESPNcoastal.com if you need more information. It is a free event. You do have to pay to get on Jekyll Island because it is a national park. I don't know why it's like that. That's just how it is. But, hey, man, we're going to be by the water. We're going to be inside. The weather's supposed to be nice. And like I said, wear as much orange and blue as you can because we're trying to drown out all that red and black because I know it's going to be a lot of it come Friday.
Ben, one more because I did this with you last year, I think. All right, Billy Napier's going to come to you. You give this team a pregame speech. Give it to me.
Man, I'm gonna look at those guys and tell them, listen, guys, at the end of the day, the best place to be is when no one expects you to do anything. The best place to be is when, hey, we in here with them and lock the door. Make sure we stare those guys in the face. Make sure we let those guys know, hey, man, y'all new to this. We true to this. Y'all happy to be here. We know we belong here. Y'all are a team that finally got over the hump. We a team that everybody expecting us to go out there, and lay an egg. We don't lay eggs, man. We are the University of Florida for a reason. We here for a reason. We run Jacksonville. It doesn't matter how you guys feel about it. I know you guys seem to think it's a home game, but guess what? We got a hell of a coach right there, man. We got a hell of a fan base. We got a hell of a squad. We're going to have a hell of an effort. Welcome to hell. Give them hell. Go Gators.
Go Gators. I like it. Hey, Ben, one more time. Thank you so much, man. Florida, Georgia. It's our weekend special to us, even though, it's not looking too bright, but it always holds a special place in our heart.
Yes, I'm not making no bets in this game because I will not be wearing no Georgia stuff. So all my Georgia friends, stop calling my phone. I'm not betting this week.
Yeah, I don't take those bets either, Ben.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff there. Man, he always brings it, Will.
Oh, man. I said it last time we had him on. I'll say it again. Like, you just want to run through a wall after you hear that guy talk about this sort of stuff. And, it's always good to see the former Florida players out there for this game specifically, right? This is the one that I think means the most to just about everybody. I mean, obviously, the Florida State game means a lot to people. Tennessee game means a lot to people. But the Georgia game is the one that I think we all point to and say, we don't want to deal with them barking at us all the time. I mean, it's fun to tell them that barking is a poor life decision after you get a win. That's it's much better that way. So yeah, man, like I said, anybody in that area, I'd be there if I could be, but the kids, I'll blame the kids.
Yeah, blame the kids. All right, hey, we got a commit to talk about, but before we do, hey, we got plenty to talk about with commits. Hopefully upcoming commits, but plenty to get into on that. But before we do, plenty of college football, plenty of NFL, other sports going on as well. MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests to fill all of your sports betting needs anytime, anywhere. You can bet on the NFL, college football. The World Series is coming up, and play for a big share of cash prizes in the weekly blackjack tournaments. If you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, that time is now. Make your winning move today. Sign up at MyBookie. Use promo code Gators and claim your deposit match of any amount up to $1,000. Again, that is promo code Gators to claim your bonus. Experience sports in a whole new light and make this season a winning one. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
You know the goosebumps you get when Florida takes the field? Or when that 63-yard Hail Mary actually works? Or the thrill of a game-winning interception in the end zone? What a rush! You can experience that same rush every day at your home with Shark Coatings. We'll cover your old, ugly concrete with a beautiful industrial concrete coating and a warranty that lasts longer than most careers in professional football. So whether your garage floor is for parking, partying, or working out, Shark Coatings can transform it. And if your pool deck is starting to look like a bulldog, old, cracked, and smells like pee, Shark Coatings can transform that too. Shark Coatings is easy to clean, stain resistant, and is 100% antibacterial and antimicrobial. We're easy on the eyes and on the maintenance. Gator Nation is worldwide, and Shark Coatings is based right in the heart of it. So whether you live in Brunswick, Georgia, or Live Oak, Florida, down to Ocala, over to New Smyrna Beach, or anywhere in between, contact us for a free estimate today. Learn more at sharkfloorcoatings.com. That's sharkfloorcoatings.com.
All right, good news. Breaking it about an hour before we came on Gators Breakdown. Just preparing for just some normal episode, Will. Where we're going to look at recruiting a little bit, but hey, you won't hear me complain. Big time commit. Let's get it started, Gator Nation. You know what it is. We got to commit, and it is big-time offensive lineman out of Orange Park, flipping him from Florida State, Roderick Kearney. He is a 4-star on the 24/7 Sports Composite. He is a 4-star on the On3 Consensus. He is the 123rd overall player on the 24/7 Sports Composite and the 4th-ranked interior offensive lineman. On3 Consensus, he is the 136th overall player and the 9th-ranked interior offensive lineman. Will, he was on campus yesterday. All those pictures and stuff that were in the commitment photo. Hey, this one I was originally told probably was not going to happen this fast, but he was on campus over the weekend. Of course, probably just updating those photos, getting those graphics out there, and popping for the Gators, flipping from Florida State, as I said, back in June. Look, remember that story? He visited Florida. And about 30 minutes after leaving campus, he commits to Florida State. And then it was like, oh, man, no, here we go. That doesn't look good. But here we are in October to kick off Florida-Georgia week. I mean, this might have been planned, I guess, a little bit with another big commitment, hopefully on the way Thursday. But as I said, we were going to talk a little bit of recruiting with the big commitment of Cormani McClain coming up and his decision coming up Thursday. but the Gators get it started, Will, with a big-time commit right here at a place of need. We talk about, a talent infusion. Well, one position that needed it, not just numbers, but to raise the talent level, was offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right. I think you can actually say that about offense in terms of recruiting the whole way across the board, right? I mean, you look at the board right now, and the top 10 guys, 8 of them until Kearney committed were on the defensive side of the ball. Now, obviously, you look at the defense over the last few weeks and say, well, maybe that's not a bad thing. But our friend Bill Sykes, he's been in the chat here tonight. If you want to hear his, or if you want to see his thoughts, you can go back and look at the comments. But
I got some. He gave me some to share, Will. So
I
will share it. Yep.
But he's been on this for a really long time. He wrote a great article for Read Reaction maybe 6 months ago about offensive line recruiting, bringing in offensive linemen. And, having elite tackles is a huge part of having an effective offensive line. But in some ways, just having numbers is a big part of having good offensive lines. And that was one of the things he looked at was Georgia and Alabama and really Clemson, and those programs just tended to almost always bring in 4 offensive linemen in every class. And you looked at the attrition, and the programs had attrition, but they could deal with it because they had numbers. And so now you've got Kearney here, again, the 123rd ranked player overall, but you've also got Najee Harris, who's an interior offensive lineman, ranked 425. So now you got 2 guys on that interior offensive line. You got Bryce Lovett at offensive tackle there at 635. If they can bring in a good to elite tackle at this point, now you're talking about an offensive line class that meets a lot of those specifications and metrics that Bill talked about in that article a while back. And now you're really looking at building that foundation. So what you don't want to do is sign 7 offensive linemen this year, and then 2 next year, and then 2 the year after that, and then have to go back out there and get 7. You just want to kind of have the consistent thing every year, a drumbeat of 4 guys. So they got 3 in this class right now, which means they need 1 more. And who that 4th one is, I think, will color what we think about the overall recruiting class. But you don't get to an elite offensive line recruiting class without having a guy like Kearney in the fold. And now we'll see what they can do beyond that.
Yep, you brought him up, and he was actually texting me right when we started this episode. So I'll read Bill's thoughts. He put them on the Gators Breakdown Plus Discord. If you didn't know, he's not on Twitter anymore. He's on the message boards every now and then, but he's very active on the Gators Breakdown Plus Discord. So if you miss Bill Sykes, you can get him out there on the Gators Breakdown Plus Discord a good bit. But he says, let's talk about why the Kearney flip to Florida is awesome. Kearney's commitment is a sign of life at Florida's longest running position of trouble. Y'all know I've written about this, but offensive line recruiting has been problematic for Florida dating back to the Meyer era. While there is still much work to be done there, think of Kearney as the first heartbeat of a patient who just got defibbed from a cardiac arrest. He says, did you know that Kearney is the first Florida offensive line prospect ranked at the top 10 of his position since Richard Garage in the class of 2018? That was 5 classes ago. First offensive line prospect ranked at the top 10 at his position since Richard Garage in 2018. Shockingly, he's only the 9th such prospect in the past 14 classes, but 6 of the previous 8 were signed by 2015. As a 4th best interior offensive lineman prospect nationally, however, Kearney is an even more exclusive company. So much so that he will only be the 4th offensive lineman ranked in the positional top 5 to sign at Florida since 2010. The Gators simply have not landed a guy like this in recent years, and they've paid the price. With a lot of resources tied to this position, Napier has to get better results recruiting the offensive line. They especially need more at offensive tackle. But Kearney is the kind of guy we need to see, and he's a great start to what I hope is a full renaissance at the position group. That is from one Bill Sykes.
Boy, that is about as energetic and optimistic as you'll hear Bill Sykes. He is I love Bill, but he's usually in my ear telling me things aren't good enough. And quite honestly, in the McElwain and Mullen eras, he was absolutely correct. And
he texted me today. He's ready to pump some sunshine, Will. So there we go. There's the first bit of sunshine from Bill Sykes.
Well, I mean, I think it's more than just that, right? I mean, I think the crystal balls have been flowing our way when it comes to Cormani McClain, at least on 24/7. You start thinking about bringing in a guy like that. If they can bring in a guy of that caliber, all of a sudden you start looking at the overall recruit ranking, and you think about recruiting and it's sort of tiers, right? You've got Alabama and Georgia, who are up there in that 93, 94 tier. Then you come down, you got Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Texas, who are in that 92, 93 tier. And LSU's there as well. Florida, if they can bring, with Kearney committing, and then if they can bring in Cormani McClain, now they're in that 92 to 93 tier. So it's not that top tier, Georgia and Alabama, but it's in the next step down in that next tier. And you can't get to that first tier without going through the first one and or without going through the second one. And so they're in the process of doing that. And when you look at a team like Oregon, they're at 90.82, Tennessee 90.62, Penn State 91.18, USC 91.06. So from a quality of player perspective, Florida is taking a step up. And I think that's what everybody's getting excited about. Now, look, you got to finish off the job. You got to get, just because you got in that second tier doesn't mean you don't want to be in the first. Right.
And Napier even said that today. Well, he was asked about recruiting during football season, for God's sakes. And he actually will talk about it a little bit. But even said, hey, look, everything looks good right now, but we have to finish. And he may have even known this was coming 7 hours later when the Roderick Kearney commits. But as he said, as we said, we'll get to Cormani McClain in just a second too. But look, he even admits that, yeah, it looks good. We're excited, but yeah, we're at a point now with about 2 months, about a month and a half to go. That now it's time to finish.
It's just like anything, right? One recruit doesn't make or break your class, but you start chaining these recruits together, and it tells a story about what Napier's doing, about what Patrick Toney's doing, right? I mean, I had an article on Read Reaction today. It was pretty popular, actually, and the take home from that was, look, like, if you're looking for qualities of a defensive coordinator, it's important if he can call the right defense, and it's important if he can get his players in the right position. The most important thing is, can he recruit? Because you need guys out there who can just make up for mistakes, right? Who, when they take a wrong angle, can get to the right spot and all those sorts of things. And that's true on the offensive line. That's true on the defensive line. And so, look, Roderick Kearney is a major step forward in terms of quality on the offensive line. You read off those stats that Bill had about, the highest ranked offensive lineman that they've had since Martez Ivy or something like that. You had Isaiah Walker come in and lasted like spring camp, right? Or not even through the spring camp. So you had a lot of those sorts of things going on. Obviously, he has to stick, he has to come in, he has to sign, and he has to be effective, and you have to develop him. Those sorts of things are in place. But one of the things, and I said this after Napier went for 2 against Tennessee, you can argue with whether he should have gone for 2 or not. But one thing you can't argue about is that he had thought out what he was going to do before that actually happened. And so, we've been yelling for years, you, I, and Bill, about process, right? That it's important that the appropriate processes are in place to then deliver the results downstream. And I think what we've seen with this recent run of commits, what we see with Kearney flipping from Florida State, what we've seen with just needing one more offensive line to sort of fill out this class, and what we've seen with some of the stuff on the field, not all of it, but some of the stuff on the field, is that there is a process in place. Now, there may be some adjustments that need to be made in that process, certainly on the defensive side of the ball. But in terms of the fact that there is a process, there is a plan, there is a chaining together of things to build to something bigger, I think we can be pretty confident that, at least compared to the Dan Mullen era, Billy Napier's a step up.
Yeah, Bill has even more thoughts on the recruiting channel on Gators Breakdown Plus Discord as well. So definitely head over there if you want more. Good stuff there. Of course, something I was going to bring up too is, of course, the recruiting in the Jacksonville area is so much better. And that's good for me too, because I'm a lot closer to these guys. So it means a lot for Channel 4 where I work, and we get to cover these guys even more. So it works. It works hand in hand. So I like seeing these guys in the 904 head down to Gainesville. But here we are, 24/7 Sports' Andrew Ivins offers this analysis of Kearney. He's a mauler up front that's able to create plenty of push with his glutes. Looks the part of 6'4", 300 pounds, has spent the past few years working in a run-heavy spread attack that asks its tackles to pull and get outside the hashes a lot. Is quick to find and take advantage of leverage. Will latch onto a defender and pump his legs as he steers them out of the way. Not one to give up on the block, and is going to do whatever he can to put a pass rusher's face mask in the dirt. Showed on tape as a junior that he can get to the second level better than most at his age. hasn't been asked to pass protect much, but has a serviceable kick step and wins more times than not on Friday nights by getting his big 10-inch hands where they need to be. A bit tight in the hips, but testing data shows he moves well laterally. Still far from a complete product and will need time to get adjusted to the play speed at the college football's highest levels, but has the build to morph into a multi-year starter for a top 25 program with some seasoning and proper coaching. Could possibly get the job done at right tackle in the right scheme, but most likely going to find the most success at one of the guard spots or even possibly a center. A potential NFL draft pick one day if he keeps progressing. On 3 offers this, flashes the athleticism of a dominant guard that plays with a mean streak, added over 40 pounds between the sophomore and junior off seasons, possesses a dense build with necessary frame to carry more than sufficient weight in college. Initial burst and overall athleticism, flashes off the screen, looks to finish defenders down and down out, and plays angry. Need to see more work in pass protection, but has a foot speed and overall athleticism to hone the craft. Plays right tackle on film, but projects to kick inside at the next level due to his girth and ability to move people with ease. So, yeah, that is the thing. At Orange Park, played in that run-heavy offense. Does play tackle there, but as you heard, will fit mostly inside right here in college. So, all right, Will, here we go. 22 commits for the Gators right now. Puts them at the 8th-ranked class in the 24/7 Sports Composite. He is a 17th commit from the state of Florida, fourth in the immediate Jacksonville area, and 5 if you want to stretch it all the way to Lake City. So one area of Florida that we needed to hit better, especially this cycle, Florida hit, and Will really concentrating in the state of Florida. And you've mentioned it, that range right there. There's plenty of prospects, Florida, especially this cycle. I mean, there was a lot of. Look, we detailed it as soon as Napier was hired and after his first transition class. You and I really dove into this bump class, and a lot of the top 5 at the positions was within driving range of Gainesville. Billy Napier doing a pretty good job so far there.
Yeah, I mean, look, the circle around Gainesville has been leaky for a really long time. And, anybody that Kirby Smart wanted, anybody that Nick Saban wanted, and anybody that Dabo Swinney wanted, and heck, even Urban Meyer and Ryan Day up at Ohio State, anybody they wanted in the state of Florida, pretty much they came in and just sort of pillaged. And you'd look up and you'd be like, all right, Miami got one guy from the state of Florida in the top 300, and Florida got 1 or 2 guys, and Florida State got 1 or 2 guys, and everybody else was going someplace else. And that is starting to change. Now, it's not perfect, right? I mean, there's still guys from the state that we would have liked to have seen stay home, but we're starting to see a significant inroads there. And I think we saw it early on, not just with IMG, but Billy Napier made some real efforts. I know that one of the guys, I think maybe reached out to you, but I know he commented on something I had. There was a presentation that Napier gave and basically brought his entire staff to a high school seminar and made sure that his staff was involved, that they were getting to know the high school coaches, those sorts of things. And the comment from the guy who runs the thing was, none of the Florida coaches before this did that. And so making those connections with the high school coaches, building those relationships, again, that speaks to the same process that I was talking about earlier. And then it helps when you're bringing in, look, this is now 14 top 300 guys that are in this class. They've got 3 in the top 100, but then there's another 6 and Kearney's one of those who are ranked between 100 and 200. So, you're looking at 9 guys who are top 200 recruits with the potential to add 1 or 2 guys who are really the elite type prospects that can really change a class and shape a class. So there's an opportunity here to, like I said, I think it's going to be rough to jump into that top tier. It's just Florida, or it's just Alabama and Georgia right now. But if you can start working your way towards the top of that second tier, then that sets the stage. And obviously, Ben mentioned, I think maybe before we came on, about Ernest Graham's son who's coming there in that 2024 class is certainly off to a fast start there as well. And this sort of sets the stage for what might be coming in 2024 as well.
Ooh, now that sets the stage, Will, for a big Thursday coming up. One of the top players in the country, one of the top cornerbacks, of course. If he's one of the top players in the country, he's one of the top cornerbacks in the country, of course. But Cormani McClain, that decision coming Thursday. I mean, there's need to really hide behind it. Most think he will choose Florida on Thursday. Florida, Alabama seem to be the top two. You heard Corey Bender and I from On 3 discuss it last week. We've discussed this one. This was the one, Will, that was the can't miss coming into the class. You know, the connection, being in the state of Florida, being one of the top prospects in the state of Florida, one of the top prospects in the country. You brought Corey Raymond in to win battles like this. Cormani McClain, look, Florida's had no issues getting DBs, but they've had trouble developing DBs, and they've had trouble getting the type we expected at a high number, at a high pace. This is going to be a really good defensive back class for Florida. It already is. But, Will, you got to take that next step. You've got to get one Cormani McClain on Thursday.
I mean, this is – so last year in the middle of the transition class, or right at the end of the transition class when signing day came, and they didn't get Harold Perkins, one of the things that I said was that was what it really meant was that the jury was still out on Napier's ability to bring in the truly elite guys. The jury's still out. I mean, if you look at this class, I think this class is excellent, but the highest ranked guy is ranked 71st in the country. Cormani McClain is ranked second. Like, if you want to start talking about the truly elite prospects, the guys who are game changers, the guys who are going to come in and day one make a difference on your football team, McClain is a guy who can do that. So, you read off that stuff about Kearney, where it's like, hey, he's going to be a good player, but it requires development. He's going to be a good player, but you're going to need to move him from tackle to guard. Cormani McClain is a cover corner on the outside day one. The minute he comes in, he's a first-round projection to the NFL right now based on the skill set he has. They're not saying you have to develop him. They're basically saying you have to house him and take advantage of his skills for 3 years before he goes on to the NFL. Like, that is the projection for a guy like McClain. And look, I mean, I know Jason Marshall has struggled this year, but he played pretty well last year as a true freshman, as the 29th ranked overall player in the country. Those guys are not can't miss. They're guys who miss maybe, 30-40% of the time. These guys who are ranked second overall, they end up in the NFL draft almost always, unless there's an injury. And so, you're getting the McClain is a can't miss prospect from Lakeland, right? So again, that circle around Gainesville has to encompass Lakeland. And so you bring in a guy of that kind of quality. If McClain commits, it's a huge deal for Billy Napier. And quite honestly, if he doesn't, it's a huge deal for Billy Napier too, because this is certainly a guy that they want. It's a guy they've targeted. It's a guy who's in their backyard. And this is the guy that when you want to announce, hey, we're back and we're gonna make sure that guys in our state come to our school, these are the guys you're talking about.
Yeah, he's been on Florida's campus. He's supposed to have been visit Alabama, has not made that trip. Thought that, okay, maybe in December. Doesn't look like, the decision's coming this week. We'll see what that means for visits. So if it completely shuts it down, we'll see what that means for Cormani McClain. But as you said, Will, there's been a lot of boxes checked for Billy Napier in improving recruiting, but there is that one last box. Probably two, is getting elite and then getting more elite. So that's really the only two boxes left. As you said, there's been an improvement in the floor of recruiting that's not even up for debate. The floor of recruiting has been absolutely raised by Billy Napier and a lot of good prospects in this class. But really the question that still remains, are the elites? And, elites, yeah, I'm putting plural on that because, we don't want Cormani McClain to be the only one of your top 5, your top 10, your top 25 players in the country. You're looking, and this is the one that has been marked. That is the can't miss. So, yeah, a lot of boxes have been checked. We all laud Billy Napier for improving recruiting since he's been the head coach at Florida, but this is the last remaining one. And look, we feel pretty good about it just a couple of days before that decision.
Yeah, so I think it's important to look at both things, right? One is that you're not competing with Mullen and McElwain, and so just saying we're better than that doesn't mean you're going to win national championships or SEC championships. There are two big behemoths and really a third when you think about Texas A&M as well, though it hasn't really translated on the field there at College Station yet. But there are those guys you're going to have to compete with in order to win big and win big the way Florida wants to win. So that's one. But two, if you do look back at the 2019 bump class, that class had 10 guys who were in the top 300, no 5 stars, and Chris Steele didn't make it through his first spring practice, and Jalen Jones was the next guy at 306 who didn't make it through as well. So you're really looking at 9 top 300 guys for that bump class who came in. Florida already has 14, with an opportunity to add Cormani McClain to make it 15, and McClain being that can't miss prospect that we're talking about. So from the standpoint of what you're saying in terms of where was Mullen in his second year of recruiting versus where is Napier in his second year of recruiting, it's not even close. Doesn't mean you don't have to take another step. Doesn't mean you don't have to move forward. Doesn't mean you don't have to maybe make sure that you're not getting heavy in one direction or the other. There's a lot of defensive linemen in this class. They need a lot of defensive linemen in this class based on what we've seen so far on the field. At the same time, we all remember the Will Muschamp era, or at least McElwain when he took over, where they just didn't have any offensive linemen at all because they hadn't signed any offensive linemen at all. And so, again, that's something that from a roster management perspective, we don't think about too much when we talk about points, when we talk about, average player rating, those sorts of things. But we do need to start thinking about balance in some capacity as well as you sort of bring the program back to normal. Though obviously I think we understand why there would be an emphasis on the defensive side of the ball from a recruiting perspective right now. But so that's what I would say is from the standpoint of where the program sits versus where it was in 2019, you could look at that 2019 bump class and go, that's a problem. That's not good enough. That's like we're going to cap out somewhere unless the development and the in-game management is just fantastic. And even then, I thought it was pretty good under Dan Mullen. It just wasn't good enough when you got into those games against Alabama and Georgia. This gives you an opportunity now to have guys out there who can compete. Cormani McClain should be able to take on any receiver that any program is going to throw at Florida. And I'm not sure you've been able to say that. I think Kyrie Elam was very, very close to that. I think, I think Jason Marshall has an opportunity to be close to that. I think a guy like McClain is going to have an opportunity to lock down anybody on the outside. And what does that mean? Well, all of a sudden it means you can do a lot of different things with all those simulated pressures and trying to trick the offense and trying to get more pressure and those sorts of things that right now you just can't do. And I would expect that with guys like McClain in, all the criticism that we've seen of guys playing, 10, 15 yards off the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 8, that's going to start to go away as these more gifted players come in.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Will, Florida at 8th right now in the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. Getting Cormani McClain would put Florida up to 279.93. See, this late in the cycle, you would think that would mean, okay, Florida might jump a spot or two. No, it keeps Florida at 8th behind LSU. So that's kind of where it is right now. When you get this late into the process and you start getting as many commits, LSU's got 22 commits right now as well with a higher player average. There, Texas, you got LSU at 283.37, Texas at 284.71, Ohio State 285.13. I mean, you'd be right behind those teams, but if I know a lot of people want to look at the rankings and say, what would it take for Florida to get top 5? Look, I didn't think top 5 was really going to be all that possible when you start looking at, all right, is it going to come in and out recruit Saban and Smart and Day and Jimbo right away? Well, might actually get Jimbo. Texas A&M class, not anywhere near where it was last year, but you get Cormani McClain, keeps Florida at 8th, right on the heels of LSU. But all these other teams are going to start adding commits at the same time. Florida will as well. Now it's just going to be about the level of recruiting. Will, if Florida's going to push for that top 5, I still don't think they get there. But you go get a couple more 5 stars. Maybe you can make that push for that top 5 spot.
Well, I mean, look, I think there are a lot of different metrics you can look at, not just point total, that point towards whether a recruiting class is going to be successful or not. And, we talk about top 5 classes because typically that implies something very specific, right, in terms of what you've done. But let's say so, and again, I'll go back to Bill. He wrote a great article for Reading Reaction probably 3-4 years ago where he was outlining what a bump class needs to have. And it was something like 2.75 stars. It was something like 17 blue chips, so 4 and 5 stars. It was a jump in the rankings of something like 9 or 10 spots. And there were all sorts of different things that you needed to do in order to have a successful bump class that eventually converted into an SEC championship. And, Napier's going to hit a lot of those metrics. I don't know that he's going to hit every one of them, but you get a guy like Samson Okunlola, offensive tackle out of Massachusetts. he's the 18th ranked player overall. That's a guy who, if you put there with that at offensive tackle with Kearney and the other guys we've mentioned earlier, all of a sudden now you look at that, go, that's a monster offensive line recruiting class. We've already talked about Cormani McClain. I don't have any inside information, but you've got guys like Keelan Keeley, you've got Desmond Ricks at IMG who just reclassified. You've got James Smith and Qua Russa from Montgomery, Alabama. Those guys are there.
There's your path.
The question is, can you bring them in, right? If Florida ends up with 4 5-star guys at the end of this, they're going to be really close to a top 5 class. The question is going to be, can they close the deal on all those guys? I think it's unlikely. I think, you're saying that as well, right? The other thing is, again, we're talking about tiers. So you can jump on a point total by signing, 32 guys.
Right.
Is that the best thing for your roster? Or are you better off waiting and having 26 guys this year, 28 guys next year, but out of that 28 next year, you got 4, 5, 6 5-star guys in that class. So those are the decisions, the roster management decisions are going to have to be made. Look, this isn't a perfect recruiting class. If it was perfect, it'd be sitting there at 1 or 2. But I think we see enough progress, we see enough movement here that we can be excited about where Florida's headed on the recruiting trail. That was always the frustrating part about Mullen. His transition class in 2018 was the exact same rating as his class in 2019, was the exact same quality as 2020. I mean,
I had lost hope.
That is the recruiting game, man. So look, we're excited. You're exactly right. We're excited because there's hope that Florida's going to be able to catch those teams they're chasing. And there's hope that these guys are going to be able to execute the schemes that are being put in place and cover up some of the holes that we see right now. And look, I get it. People sit there and go, well, these are 4-star guys. These are guys who should be able to cover up those holes, but they weren't recruited by this staff. They weren't evaluated by this staff. And, they weren't very good in 2020 and they weren't real good in 2021 either, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And so to expect them to come in and just change that, I think is a little bit misguided. Now, I'm not sure any of us expected them to be this bad this year, but hey, that is what it is, which means you got to look at that development. You got to look at that hope from the recruiting pipeline. And that's what we're seeing from all the guys who potentially could be Gators in this class.
All right, there we go. We were going to get into some Billy Napier and Tyreek Sapp and Anthony Richardson sound today, but Kearney committing, we kind of split this up. We had Ben on for some Florida Georgia coverage to kick off this week. Will and I follow that up with some recruiting. I'll save all that for later this week. Probably we put that in the Georgia preview later on this week. But we're talking recruiting during football season. What in the world?
That's what happens when you're 4-3, man.
and getting commit.
Well, both of those things. But, we all thank you for asking the questions that needed to be asked last year and setting us up to have hope here in 2022 as we're getting recruits in the middle of the season. It's been a while since that sort of stuff's happened.
Yeah. So this week, of course, Florida Georgia preview on probably Wednesday. They're going to do some work on it on Tuesday. Florida Georgia preview on Wednesday. I don't know. My prediction for that game is probably not going to be all too pretty, but we'll see. We'll see what holds there. Plenty of recruiting coming up on Thursday, of course. Hopefully, another extra episode this week talking about a commitment Thursday. So don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, Will, but
I might want to come on for that one, buddy.
Yeah, there we go. one of the big ones. One of the big ones. Sitting right there. Will, you released an article. You and Nick both out there really detailing the Florida defense. I know it's, as you said earlier, it's been the lightning rod topic. Billy Napier was asked about it a lot today in the press conference. But what did you and Nick come up with on Read and Reaction?
Yeah, so Nick's got a running thing now on a weekly basis. He's doing something called Newson's Notes that looks at sort of important things going on in the program. So obviously he was looking at the defense, looking at essentially how many yards they've given up versus how many they could have given up. And spoiler alert, it's not a pretty story, but it does say something about what the defense can be when they're actually doing what we think they should be doing. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some limitations. So Nick sort of took a look at that. And then mine was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Well, completely tongue-in-cheek. The title of the article is actually Time to Pull the Plug, and it's talking about Napier, Toney, and the Florida defense.
Wait. Time to pull the plug with a question mark.
Yeah, with a question mark. But again, people get emotional. People start talking about it. People 7 games in are saying, all right, Toney's a failure as a defensive coordinator. And what I wanted to look at was some comps of guys in the past. And so if you look at Nick Saban, his offense at Alabama, again, remember, Saban's a defensive guy, right? His offense at Alabama took a step back. If you look at Kirby Smart, his first year at Georgia, again, a defensive guy, his offense took a step back. So now you look at Florida and you got Billy Napier, an offensive guy. His defense has taken a step back. And the question is, what happens in the second year for programs that historically have had that sort of thing for both those guys, but also guys who are not Saban or Smart, because you're not always going to get that guy, right? Do you see a bounce back? And then, what should we be looking for when it comes to that sort of stuff? And then, again, we talked about recruiting tonight. I took a look at that too, because Florida has a really, really good defensive recruiting class coming in. They've emphasized the defensive side of the ball. And I think it's important to recognize that Patrick Toney's a big part of that. And so looking at his scheme and saying, well, he hasn't taught the players who are here, the defense is bad, it's unacceptable. All those things may be true, but there's more to being a college coach, more to being a defensive coordinator than just, did you get blown out by Hendon Hooker, who, by the way, just obliterated Alabama as well a couple of weeks ago too. So, look, the Florida defense has been bad this year. We know it's been bad. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, a lot of guys who don't necessarily know what they're doing, all the different things that we've cataloged. But I think it's important to maintain perspective. Again, Florida may go out and get absolutely blown off the field by Georgia. That should not dictate what we think about Patrick Toney and Billy Napier. What we need to do is take a bigger, wider look and say, all right, well, what happens when we look at programs that have built themselves in the right way? And everybody points to Nick Saban losing to Louisiana Monroe that first year. But the thing they don't really pay a whole lot of attention to is that he was in a lot of one-score games. And those one-score games turned into blowouts in year two, and all of a sudden they were competing for the SEC championship. And same thing with Kirby Smart. They were in a bunch of one-score games that first year he was there. And all of a sudden that next year, those one-score games turned into blowouts, and they were playing for the national championship there against Tua and Alabama. So there is an avenue where these one-score games are a good indicator. There's also an avenue where they're not a real good indicator, because in year two, if you looked at Mullen and you looked at McElwain, they were still playing those one-score games in year two. They weren't turning those into blowouts, and I think that's really one of the things we need to look for. So I'm not even sure I included that in the article, but that to me is the thing we want. That to me is one of the things.
Save that one for the off-season content, Will.
There you go, buddy. So that's what's going on. Then obviously we'll have a Georgia preview up, both stand-up and holler episode and a written preview for the Georgia game, some film looking at specifically what in the world is Florida going to do with the tight ends, because I hear what Ben's saying about have confidence and all that sort of stuff when you're on defense, but what did Missouri do when it came to shutting down Georgia's offense? I think that's the tape you have to look at, and you don't have the same players Missouri does.
They beat them up front.
Yeah, but you know what? That means you're going to have to leave the secondary in some compromising situations. You're going to have to trust them to do it, or you're going to back them off 30 yards and you're going to give them a bunch of first downs on third down. You got to make the choice, right? And the interesting thing is that Billy Napier in that Tennessee game decided to go for it right from the start, right? Fourth down, he was up, he was going for it every fourth down. He decided that's what he needed to do. I'm really curious to see, and I think there are a couple of things that we can learn from that Missouri game to understand on the other side of the ball, what's he going to have to do in order to do the same thing. Because look, every game he's played has been within 10 points or 7, right? Even the losses. And this is a game where Florida, I think, 3 touchdown underdogs. So
it is, 20. That was gonna be something we got into tonight, but we're running out of time here. But yeah, it was 22 and a half.
So this is one of those where the rubber's going to meet the road. Either Georgia's going to prove they're the superior team, or Napier's going to be able to prove that he can keep these games close. And look, no moral victories in the SEC, obviously, but I think Anthony Richardson going out and having a good game against a Georgia team that just completely flummoxed him last year is a significant W for Florida, even if it doesn't end up being a W on the field. Obviously, we hope it does, and 4-4, nobody's going to feel good about it. But this is a real challenge for this team, and I'm interested to see how they're able to take it on, and whether they embrace that challenge in a way that's similar to the way they embraced the challenge against Tennessee.
Well, I even have this weird thought too, and it could be true, and we won't really know. But Florida could figure out some things during the bye week. They could actually play a good game on defense. They could actually play a more consistent, good game on offense. But Georgia could go out there and play their best game of the year, and we would never know. You know, that's kind of the team they are. Florida could actually be improved, have figured out some things. We may not be able to tell till they play against Texas A&M. That's how good this Georgia team can be if they're on offense, if they're on defense. Florida may go out there and play a good game, and it may not matter. We may not be able to tell.
Maybe. I mean, I'm really interested to see what happens because Florida, if you look at any sort of advanced stats, even look at yards per play, stuff like that, Florida has a better offense than Oregon. Florida has the exact same rating when you look at predicted points added, which is an EPA-based metric, as Oregon. So they're both bad, right? And so Oregon just got completely demolished by Georgia. And so, again, that's maybe one thing that Billy Napier wants to look back on. Good thing he had 2 weeks to look back on that and see what Oregon did and say, okay, we're going to do the other thing. But
yeah, their pass defense is about as bad as Florida's.
Well, so the interesting thing about Florida is whether it's pass or rush, they've basically been equally bad. That's not necessarily been true for Oregon. And not necessarily true for a lot of different teams. And this was sort of my recommendation last week was pick one, right? Either decide you're going to make Stetson Bennett beat him or decide you're going to make the running back for Georgia beat you, but do not allow both to beat you, right? Like you got to make a choice and you're going to have to stick with that choice, even if it's not successful. One of the things I think you run into is, okay, I'm going to try, a cover 2 man under, and then that didn't work. So I'm going to switch to something else. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's not the best way to do things in most cases. You got to sort of stick to your guns. Just like Napier went for it on 4th down against Tennessee pretty much every time because he knew he needed to based on, he's like, look, I'm not going to change my approach in the first quarter or the fourth quarter. I'm just going to go for it the entire game. I think it's the same thing from the defensive side of the ball. So, yes, it's entirely possible. If Georgia plays its best game and Florida plays its best game, Georgia probably does win by a couple of touchdowns. If Florida plays its best game and Georgia plays like a B or a C, it's a close game. I think you're going to have one of those, Madden games where you turn it on and you're 8-0 and you're driving down the field. And every time you get to the one, you get hit and the ball gets knocked out. And, if you're an unscrupulous player, you hit reset and go, I'm going to play this one again. And, I've never done that, I swear. And, this is one of those where I think in order to get that sort of win, you're going to need a game like that. But that happens every once in a while. I mean, just think about 2012, right? And what it took for Georgia to beat Florida in that game where Florida just turned the ball over and over and over again. And, for all of the laudits that have gone Georgia's way, and I think their offense has been really good this year, Stetson Bennett has not been as good this year as he was last year. At least he hasn't been as efficient. And you look at that Missouri game, and that was a game where essentially Georgia, with a couple of big plays to the tight ends there in the fourth quarter, was able to bail out what was really a substandard performance by Bennett up until that point. Does Florida have the horses on defense to do that same thing? Probably not. But does Florida have better horses on the offensive side of the ball to score some points compared to Missouri? Yeah. So this is one where I think if you get into a shootout, if they exceed the over-under, I think Florida's going to keep it close. I think but you always have that it's one of those things where you just don't know what you're going to get from the Florida offense. Like You might get 35 points. You might get 6 points. And a lot of it's going to depend on turnovers, and a lot of it's going to depend on whether the explosives come. Georgia obviously very good at preventing those. And so, we'll see. But again, same thing. LSU sort of the bellwether for the season. The fact that Florida loses that game says a lot about the program and where it is. I think we've sort of ratcheted back our expectations significantly. The thought after that or before the LSU game was, all right, let's get a solid win, 5-2 heading into the Georgia game. Even if you lose that when you're 5-3, but you're still feeling good about yourself. Now it's, to really feel good about yourself coming out of this one, you're either going to have to play it really close or you're going to have to come out with a W. And so, because you get beat by 30 points, no one's going to be encouraged going into that Texas A&M game, regardless of the struggles that they've had. So this is one of those where I think Florida has a chance to establish what they're going to be for the rest of the year. And I'm excited to see what they do this weekend because, look, it's Florida, Georgia, man. Like, if you don't like this one, if you don't want to watch this one, I don't know what's wrong with you. You got everybody always throws out that you're not a real fan, but if you don't want to watch Florida, Georgia, you're not a real fan. I'll throw that one out there.
Yeah, I've never found myself not wanting to watch a game, no matter how bad I might think it turned out. I'm watching my Gators, as we've always said. You get 12, 13, 14 of these a year. I'm watching. So, Good stuff, Will. A lot to get into. I know we were thrown for a good loop, about an hour before we had to hit record here. Gators pick up Roderick Kearney. Of course, be on the lookout for Cormani McClain on Thursday. Everybody hit that like button, hit that subscribe button before we sign off here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. You can find Will on Twitter at WillMilesSEC and his site, readandreaction.com. I am the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.